Hey, Kontrol. Whoa! Check out this cutscene.
Not a cutscene. I'm watching a movie. Final Fantasy Kingsglaive.
Oh, Kingsglaive.
You've heard of it?
No.
It's a tie-in movie for Final Fantasy XV. It dropped a few weeks before the game was released.
Oh, like Spirits Within.
Sort of. Spirits Within wasn't connected to any games in the series.
Did you know Spirits Within is one of the best sci-fi movies ever made?
I didn't know that. Where did you hear that dog poop?
From Max in Life is Strange.
That is a tasty plasma. Maybe I could sneak in and watch Final Fantasy Spirits Within. I don't care what anybody says, that's one of the best sci-fi films ever made.
Mellow. They were just establishing her character as a pretentious hipster.
Oh, so Spirits Within is overrated?
No. Everyone hated Spirits Within. Overrated means something mediocre that lots of people say is brilliant, like Blade Runner.
Or Life is Strange.
Exactly. Greetings all, my name is Kontrol. I'm a professional artist, a huge fan of classic Marvel and DC comics, and very much conflicted about Final Fantasy XV. Regular viewers to this channel, we have a small handful, will know that this isn't my first pinup video for the Final Fantasy game series. In my Final Fantasy X2 essay, I mentioned that there are gaps in my experience with the series. When I finished 15 a couple of years ago, it was my first time beating a Final Fantasy game in over a decade. There were varying reasons along the way that caused me to blow off years of entries in the series. My problem was the insanely high bar set by the original Final Fantasy VII, and my subsequent disappointment with Final Fantasy VIII the following year. Part 7 put the series on such a pedestal in my mind that I basically refused to buy any game in the series I wasn't confident would live up to that same standard. Now, I was initially put off by the concept of an all-male static party for the 15th game. The trailer seemed to promise big spectacle, something worthy of what would be Final Fantasy's first appearance on the next-gen game consoles. So I decided to give it a try when it came out. That was the plan anyway. I was playing Dishonored 2, Doom 2016, etc., and lots of Overwatch and Destiny at the time, so that delayed my purchase. And I later found out it was going to appear in 4K, or something close to it, on Xbox One X in late 2017. Now, as most hardcore gamers know by now, only good things come from waiting several months before buying AAA games. Egregious bugs from the release window are usually ironed out, and the price is always lower. So as a consumer, you end up paying significantly less money for a much improved product. In the case of Final Fantasy XV, this was especially true since the game launched with not only gameplay issues but huge gaps in the story that severely impacted the game's finale. It turns out that Final Fantasy XV was released basically as a work in progress. After many, and I mean many, years of development, Square Enix simply couldn't afford to wait any longer and just put the thing on sale unfinished. Now, to Square's credit, they did introduce a number of free updates that added additional cutscenes and gameplay options, which meant that by waiting a year, I got to play a bigger, better Final Fantasy XV in 4K for $19.99. All this intrigue is merely to say I had an optimal playthrough of the game. My overall impression of Final Fantasy XV was not affected by its premature release by Square, and it's easily my least favorite of the 4 Final Fantasy games I've completed. Now, Final Fantasy XV is kind of famous for its missing chunks of story. The fact is, unless you were one of the 14 people known to have sat down and watched the Kingsglaive CG movie, most of the lore and backstory remained a complete mystery for the entire playthrough. I am not kidding. The game proper doesn't bother bringing players up to speed. Imagine Lord of the Rings opening with the forming of the Fellowship, and not a single flashback. The game's obligatory romance occurs between 2 characters who never even have a conversation. The game tells us their communication for over a decade was via Magic Dog.
I'm sorry. Did you say Magic Dog?
Magic Dog.
Magic Dog.
He's a dog, but like magic.
Oh, okay, so the game takes place in a fantasy world with no phones. That makes sense.
They have phones.
Did she at least send him naked self?
So, the romance element is botched beyond all recognition as well. But these well-documented and pretty egregious problems aren't my biggest problems with the game. See, Final Fantasy XV is sort of two games in one. One game is a beautiful open-world RPG sandbox of bright colors, thrilling battles, and adventure, with interesting places to visit, varied and challenging quests, entertaining side characters, and most importantly, delicious food. This version of Final Fantasy XV is about as good as this kind of thing gets. The other game is an entirely plot-driven funeral procession of generic video game levels and narrative melodrama. It takes shock players to a bland and unsatisfying conclusion. These two divergent games are neatly separated from each other by a plot development that occurs about 75% into the playthrough, so it's very easy to say the exact point where things went off the rails. Now, it's very fortunate that the vast majority of Final Fantasy XV is as good as it is. What's very unfortunate is the bad stuff is all at the end. A bad ending does more damage to the overall impression than a bad beginning, which is why so many people seem to forget how amazing Mass Effect 3 actually was. Side note, worst ending in movie history? Gladiator. Don't argue with me. Now, there's an epic sequence that happens in Final Fantasy XV right before it all goes downhill. That sequence is what is loosely depicted in my pinup. Our hero, King Noctis, going Super Saiyan to defeat the towering Leviathan in the Kingdom of Alticia. This version of Leviathan has a huge attitude problem, and he needs to be shown who's boss.
Yeah, make him bite the curb, King Noctis. It's gonna be Leviathan on the grill tonight, guys. I'll melt the butter.
Noctis's physical proximity to his fiancée Luna Freya at this moment is about as close as he gets to her in this game, which explains all the backed up energy spewing out of him. If it sounds like I'm down on Final Fantasy XV, I'm not really. I do have positive memories of most of my time in it, and I wouldn't tell people to not buy it, but it is disappointing that they couldn't find a more elegant way to wrap up the story. Most open world games just handle this type of thing better. Anyway, if you disagree with every word I've said and are currently giving your monitor dirty looks, let me have it in the comments. I haven't mentioned this in a while, but suggestions for upcoming videos are very welcome here. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you haven't already, and make sure to subscribe for future pinups and commentary from yours truly. Kontrol out.